Hey guys, how's it going? So this is my third attempt to try to record this video for you guys. First attempt was a big fail because I recorded the whole video and then I noticed that my stream wasn't working. So of course it didn't save to YouTube. The second time I tried recording this video, it actually successfully uploaded to YouTube, but my sound was terrible, like horrible. So here I am on my third attempt at this video, hoping that this finally works for you guys so that I could go about my business and record the next video. I probably should have recorded today anyways. So without further ado, guys, this is your very tired teacher. I stayed up till 4 last night trying to do the 2 fail videos that I did. But anyways, here I am at 11 o'clock at night, again, late as hell, trying to give you guys some content that you may have missed and more of an in-depth look at the Southern Colonies. So this is your period 2 look at the Southern Colonies. And let's start off by giving this some historical context. So first off, guys, I mean, let's think back. Let's think back to like period 1 step, to like European exploration. So pretty much what we had going on was European countries like totally making a ton of cash off of their colonial holdings. So we've got Spain making hella money off of the gold and silver coming out of their New World colonies in Mexico and in South America. And we also have, them making a ton of money off of like sugar plantations in the Caribbean. Let's face it, Spain is really rich during this time, and other countries are kind of wanting a piece of that. So even Portugal's been like super involved in the exploration game. I mean, these guys make more money off of like trade than per se like gold and silver, like, the Spanish. But still, like, they're fully involved in like, trading, especially with the Far East, with China, with India, and they even delve into the African slave trade, as well as have their own colonial holding in Brazil in the New World. So even the French may not have the gold and silver that Spain does, but hey, they are living the life up around present-day Canada, well, Quebec-ish area, and they are, heavily invested with the fur trade, with fishing, and they have established this good relationship with Native Americans, and they are, mutual business partners per se. So that's kind of what we're going at with this. And England looks at all this stuff, they're like, hey, we need to get in on this, having a colony as well. So that's what they do. And our first attempts at colonies in the New World for England are going to be the Southern Colonies, mainly Virginia. And here's an AP tip for you guys. All right, the AP test honestly treats this time period as more like an overview. They don't go super like hardcore on like details and specifics for you guys. Meaning, like, honestly, you don't need to know about Georgia. Like, straight up. Sorry, Georgia, but AP don't know you. Same with like North Carolina and South Carolina. Like, honestly, bro, the Carolinas, just know that they have cash crops and it's rice. Like, that's it. Georgia started off as like a prison colony and then freaking went to cash crops after that. I mean, boom, done. We are done with 3 colonies already. Okay. For Maryland, all they care about with Maryland is that, yeah, it's part of the Chesapeake, which is another name they like to use to like describe the Southern Colonies. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about that in a minute. Anyways, Maryland, I mean, all the big distinction for that area is that there's Catholics. I mean, there's a little bit of a clash between Protestants and Catholics in the Southern Colonies, and that's where Catholics go. To Maryland, because Lord Baltimore himself, who established the colony, is a Catholic, and that's going to be your Catholic haven for the Southern Colonies. So really, guys, when it comes down to it, for the southern colonies, I mean, all we gotta really concentrate on is Virginia, which is part of the greater Chesapeake area, which also includes the colony of Jamestown. So Jamestown is where it's at, and we're gonna go in depth with that right now. So let's go ahead and see like how England kind of started this stuff up. All right, they don't necessarily like finance this with the crown, like Spain did, like Portugal did. No, what they go with instead is with joint stock companies. So joint stock companies, you kind of think of them as more like old school, kind of like corporation type entities. All right, there's going to be a group of investors coming together, and they're going to be like, hey, let's pull our money together and finance this voyage to the New World. And if we get rich off of it, cool. We get rich together. If we lose money off of it, that's bad. But at least it's not one person losing money. It's like the loss is shared amongst those individual investors. So, the Virginia company is going to be the main joint stock company we're going to talk about today because, we're talking about Virginia. So, though, with all this emphasis for Virginia, Virginia honestly is not the main colony, okay, that starts it off. The colony that actually starts it off for everybody is going to be Roanoke, but it's kind of a fail. That's our first attempt at a colony in the New World. So Roanoke is established in 1585 under Sir Walter Raleigh, and it's around present day like northern part of North Carolina. So this place is going to be abandoned. Boom, fail. Okay, first attempt. Second attempt at Roanoke. John White comes over 2 years later in 1587 with a group of settlers. So these people are like, hey, they're living there in Roanoke, but John White has to go back to England for supplies. Hold up here. This is a time period where Great Britain and Spain are fighting like cats and dogs. Think like the Spanish Armada kind of period. It's around then, right? So, what goes on is that, he's kind of stuck in England for like 3 years. The dude cannot go back to Roanoke. And what happens to the colonists? They mysteriously vanish. No, guys, it's not zombies in the New World. And no, these dudes didn't do cannibalism. It's a bit simpler than that. What actually happens is we've got new archaeological evidence coming up pretty freaking recently. I mean, we're talking like the last year or so. And what happened was the colonists are actually going to move in with the neighboring tribe, which is the Croatoans. These guys are friendly, and we find archaeological evidence doing digs around the sites that the Croatoans lived at, and we see some artifacts, that belong to English settlers. No joke, guys. Archaeology is basically digging through somebody's trash. Like, historically. I mean, it's not as glamorous as Indiana Jones most of the time. It's pretty much doing just that. Figuring out what the hell happened to people. So, anyways, I digress. Let's get back to the story here. Now, there's also been accounts of people coming across like blue-eyed Native Americans, and they're freaking out. They're like, what the heck? How is this even possible? Well, that's how it's possible. The English settlers moved in with the Croatoans and started like intermarrying with them. So, Roanoke, no longer a mystery. It's a sorry American Horror Story. You guys should probably name that season after Jamestown, because that's where the true horror story of the New World happens in the first place. Jamestown is our first successful English colony, believe it or not. And it's founded in 1607, even though the beginning years were such a fail. Like, oh my god, fail all over the place. So, here's what's going on with Jamestown. Alright, obviously we're not going to land in North Carolina because Roanoke was a bust like twice, right? Need to go further up north. So, here's where we're going. We're actually going through the Chesapeake Bay right here. See? Chesapeake. this area of Virginia and Maryland, Chesapeake, okay? So, going up the James River, and you see Jamestown Island right here, that's where we're headed. And so, that's pretty much what's going on. We landed Jamestown Island, and this is like, dude, this is just such a bad, bad place to land. Like, for real. Because the weather that they're going to experience is going to be kind of harsh. Diseases galore, and we're not just talking like, you know, diseases from like bad water because this is a freaking swamp. We're talking about like diseases like malaria because of the mosquitoes in the swamp. So the first couple of years, this almost does them in, drinking the water. And okay, people back in the day didn't have any sort of rhyme or reason into thinking about microscopic germs or bacteria or whatever. It just kind of like was a thing for them. So they didn't understand that pooping upstream and peeing upstream and having that wastewater come down to where your colony is might not be a good thing. People can get sick. So we got poop water and swamp water. That's what they're drinking, and this is gonna kill so many people. Like, so many freaking people. Okay. But, anyways, adding on top of that, alright, the settlers that do come over, with the first settlers in Jamestown, are gonna be literal gold diggers. Like, no joke, guys. I mean, gold diggers in, like, the literal sense. I mean, for real, they were hired by the Virginia Company to dig for gold. So, and that's their job. They dig for gold. They're not gonna build a freaking shelter. They're not gonna, like, you know, farm. They're not about that. They're just about digging gold, and that's what they do. So, the other people that travel along with them are pretty much their bosses. They're gonna be, like, working for the Virginia Company or other, like, wealthy-ish elites who want a piece of like the gold action in the New World. So those people sure as hell aren't gonna like do the hard work to keep the colony going. They're not gonna like do any of that stuff. Like, no way. So what we got is a freaking disaster. Okay, let's fast forward to the next disaster here. We got a very harsh winter in 1609, and Lord, this is a terrible time for the colonists of Jamestown because we've got like such food shortages that happen. A supply ship was supposed to come in October. It got sunk in a hurricane, crash landed in Bermuda. So the settlers kind of desperate. They're starting to steal food from the Powhatans, which is the tribe in the area, and the Powhatans are getting super upset with this. I mean, they are pissed that the settlers are doing this. So they're gonna like kill the settlers' livestock. They're gonna harass the settlers who actually do try to work the fields for food. And I mean, these people were poorly prepared for the winter of 1609. And what goes on is, okay, just gonna say it, cannibalism. I mean, these people were desperate. They first ate roots and rats and snakes and dug up corpses. Yeah, they dug up corpses. They're like, hey, William over there died. Hey, he looks pretty good. Let's eat him. Like that kind of thing. This is what our founding fathers are doing. Who would have thought? Founding of America. Cannibalism. But anyways, this is a very horrible time for the settlers of Jamestown. I mean, they survived poop water. They survived marsh water. They survived Native American attacks because you know that was going on at the same time. And now they're being done in by cannibalism. So, and well, starving during the winter of 1609. So pretty much, oh, I got the statistic wrong down there. I gotta change it. It's supposed to be 30. No, it's supposed to be 60 colonies, not 38. 60 colonists survived the starving time. The number 38 was actually for the first go around where they're drinking swampy poop water. That's the first time. This time around, 60. So, speaking of like swampy poop water, here we go. This is George Percy, who's going to describe the hellacious experience of Jamestown in the first couple of years. Here's what he's got to say. Our men were destroyed with cruel diseases, as swellings, fluxes, burning fevers, and by wars, and some departed suddenly, but for the most part they died of mere famine. They were never Englishmen left in a foreign country in such misery as we were in this new discovered Virginia. We watched every 3 nights, lying on the bare cold ground, what weather soever came, warded all the next day, which brought our men to the most feeble wretches. Our food was but a small can of barley, sawed in water, to 5 men a day. Our drink, cold water taken out of the river, which was at a flood very salt, at a low tide full of slime and filth, which was the destruction of many of our men. So like I said, guys, freaking miserable time in Jamestown the first couple of years. So things are going to turn around a little bit because, you know, after the winter of 1608 and 1607, 1608, I mean, somebody's got to like get this colony into shape, and that person's going to be Captain John Smith. So Captain John Smith is not exactly the kind of guy you pictured from the Disney cartoon Pocahontas. I mean, look at him. This big burly dude, he's probably pushing 40. So, anyways, Captain John Smith is there in Jamestown with the original, 38 people who survived swampy poop water. So, he basically says, hey, you don't work, you don't eat. Straight up. And he's going to force the colonists, the gold diggers, to start actually working on surviving. Working on those crops, working on the shelter. Plus, it kind of helps that he develops a relationship with the Powhatan tribe. That was after he was so-called taken prisoner and stuff. And this is around the time he meets Pocahontas. And mind you, Pocahontas is not is not what she appears to be in the Disney cartoon either. I mean, we'll see a picture of her right now. Just keep that in mind. There's some continuity problems here. But anyways, a little bit more about John Smith. This guy is gonna dodge the proverbial bullet of the starving time. He's not there for it because he actually was injured in a gunpowder explosion and was forced to go back to England to, treat his wounds and stuff in October of 1609. So that dude left at the right time because who knows, man, the colonists really hated him because he made them work. So he may have been one of the persons that they ate. Just saying. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about Pocahontas. So, Pocahontas. She, obviously by her portrait, okay. This is after she met John Smith. This is when she's married to John Rolfe. So, she was about 10, maybe 12 years old when she actually met John Smith. So, yeah, no romance there. Are you kidding me? Chief Powhatan probably would have, killed John Smith. For real. So, no. But anyways, she does marry John Rolfe, and they do visit England while they're married, and she has a son. So, what happens to Pocahontas is, well, this portrait is, of course, painted in England, and you could see that she's wearing, English clothing, right? She's not even wearing, the native clothing that she would probably wear. And, dude, they literally, whitewashed her. Look at her skin. I mean, she is freaking light. Yeah, she probably wasn't that light in reality, but the artist took liberties and, well, she looks white. And, again, I mean, for the figurative whitewashing of her character, well, of herself, actually, they call her Rebecca. See, they're in a caption, they're calling her Rebecca, not Pocahontas. So, I mean, dude, this is this is what's going on. And sadly, she does succumb to disease while she is in London because, well, hey, London be hella dirty back in the day, and even though she's been around Englishmen, she doesn't have immunities to all the diseases that they have. So that is the story of Pocahontas. And the guy that she married, like I said, is John Rolfe. So, John Rolfe is going to kind of change things for Jamestown. I mean, this dude makes Jamestown a profitable place. So John Rolfe is going to actually bring some tobacco back with him from Jamaica. No, guys, before you even say it, it is not that kind of tobacco. No. This is actually more like closer to like cigarette tobacco, okay? It's not to say that tobacco wasn't native to this area, which it was. It was just hella harsh and bitter and like would knock you out kind of tobacco. Not necessarily the type of tobacco that would be very popular in Europe. This tobacco from Jamaica, popular. So, John Rolfe brings it over, plants it in Jamestown, and boom, Jamestown has its cash crop. This is the financial windfall everybody was waiting for, and now Jamestown is freaking popular. So, what the Southern colonies are going to do for money? I mean, they're going to plant these cash crops. Cash crops like Sea Island cotton, tobacco, indigo, and rice. Like, these are the things that they plant. These are the ones that are going to be the big money makers. So, this is really going to bring a lot of people to the Southern colonies. I mean, these crops bring in a lot of money. Especially like tobacco at first. Tobacco is going to be the main money maker. And then in the Carolinas, it's going to be rice, cotton throughout the whole Southern colony region, and indigo. Indigo is very popular at that time because you can get blue and purple dyes out of the indigo plant. So, yeah, popular colors back in the day. So, because of this, booming industry with cash crops, people are going to want to move to the Southern colonies. So, the availability of land is also going to attract a lot of people to this area. I mean, there's like land all over the place so far. Hardly anybody living on it. As far as like, well, settlers. I mean, there's Native Americans living all over the place, but English settlers, they haven't claimed it yet. So, open land, right? So, let's talk a little bit about the other colonies just for a minute. Georgia, at first, is established as a buffer zone between Spanish Florida and the English colonies. And, yeah, there were actually prisoners, like, brought to Georgia. But eventually, it's going to turn into your cash crop, like, area, pretty much reminiscent of the rest of the Southern colonies. Carolinas, they were the Carolinas at first, together, and then in 1712, North Carolina and South Carolina are going to split. And again, they're heavily invested in cash crops, and also, they're going to rely on indentured servitude and slavery. Same with Maryland. Same deal. I mean, but the only distinction that they have, though, is going to be, well, Catholicism. Catholicism is very welcome in Maryland because of the Lord Baltimore. But Virginia, like, that's what I said, guys. The reason why we're concentrating on Virginia, concentrating on Jamestown, concentrating on the Chesapeake is because, I mean, what goes in these areas is what goes with the rest of the colonies. For real. So when we talk about New England next time, I'll go ahead and start like comparing and contrasting the two areas with you because, like I said, guys, AP tries to keep it simple. They're not really like looking at detailed stuff for the colonies. They're looking more at trends and more at like comparing and contrasting. Like the AP questions that I've seen on colonial America involved just that. It's like comparing and contrasting the Chesapeake to New England. And really, it's using like geography, economics, political systems, religion, that kind of stuff, as like your various reasons to compare and contrast. Simple. So just keep that in mind. Now, talking more about the Southern colonies, there's going to be this distinction between rich and poor, and we'll see that highlighted when we talk about the two various areas of the Southern colonies. So, because we do have a largely agricultural society due to our geography and our climate. Climate is very mild in the South. Geography, very good soil, okay? Lends itself to agriculture, to cash crops. And since we have that agrarian society, we are going to have less of a focus on moving into towns and cities. And it's going to be a more rural setting than urban setting. So it's another thing to keep in mind. And because we have this more rural setting, the plantation system that's developed, well, with the wealthier settlers, right? They're going to handle things in-house. Which means that, you know, they're going to depend on themselves for food, they're going to depend on themselves for clothing, they're going to depend on themselves for, like, religious worship. I mean, they worship on their own. Everything that people would probably normally congregate to a city for, these guys are going to handle, like, on their own turf, pretty much. These plantations are going to be located along waterways, and where we're going to see the plantations will be mainly along the coast. That's where we're going to see, like, a lot of the plantations. And the distinct area that's going to have these plantations is going to be the tidewater. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tidewater really quick. The tidewater is going to kind of be represented by this image right here. So you see the plantation home on the top of the hill. I know the perspective's bad on this, guys, but just go with it, all right? So you see the waterway down at the bottom, the ship coming on through. I mean, it makes sense because of ease of transport of your goods and such, right? So the tidewater is going to be the area where the wealthy elite plantation class is going to work. And you can tell this is a big plantation home because, I mean, come on, massive scale of the home at first, right? Plus these little houses down here are usually indentured servant quarters or slave quarters later on. Now, where did the poor live? They sure as hell didn't live in the tidewater. They lived in Piedmont, which is honestly the frontier. That's where they live. So this is going to be your newer settlers to the southern colonies, to Virginia, right? And it's also going to be ex-indentured servants living here as well. So these people are not going to grow cash crops. They're going to be like subsistence farmers, just farming for survival. They're going to trap game. They're going to hunt for themselves. I mean, it's going to be pretty much a survival game with the Piedmont. So because they're along that frontier, mind you, they're going to get attacked a lot by Native Americans. So this is kind of like the basis of Bacon's rebellion that happens in 1676. So Nathaniel Bacon right here is part of these colonists that live in the Piedmont along the frontier. His crew is made up of like former indentured servants and, like we said, new immigrants to the area. So Native Americans constantly attack this area, and Nathaniel Bacon's like, hey, Governor Berkeley, come on now, dude. Send military protection for us. We are getting slaughtered out here. Governor Berkeley's like, no. I'm not gonna like approve a request to send the militia to protect frontier farmers, because In politics, guys, money talks, and the wealthy planters that lived in the Tidewater are going to be like, no, we're not going to pay for that army to go protect these guys. So Governor Berkeley denies their request. So Nathaniel Bacon raises his own army for protection. Alright? A third of this army is made up of debtors and landless settlers, amongst the former indentured servants and new immigrants. Okay? All that together in one crew. So Governor Berkeley is going to be like, hey, that army that you raised, Nathaniel Bacon, it's illegal. So Bacon's army marches down to Jamestown. They're going to demand to meet with colonial leaders about this, because come on now, they can't even form their own militia for like their own protection. What gives? So colonial leaders deny their meeting, and this is going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, because Nathaniel Bacon's forces are going to set fire to Jamestown. Jamestown is ablaze after that. So what really this symbolizes is that Nathaniel Bacon's army, well, Bacon's rebellion in general, is going to highlight the fighting that's going on between the wealthy classes and the poor. And the wealthy classes, who are the ones bringing in indentured servants in the first place, are going to think twice about this system of indentured servitude. And they're going to not really do it anymore. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what indentured servitude is. So you see that contract right there? That's a contract developed between the person bringing in indentured servants and the indentured servant themselves. So indentured servants are not slaves. Okay, there's a contract right there, meaning they had a choice. Slaves do not have a choice. Okay, also another distinction: indentured servants usually are only there to work the land for oftentimes a period of 7 years, and this was done so that they could pay back the debt that they owed the person they're working for, as expenses for their New World voyage. Okay? That's what they're paying back. So it is a set amount of time with a contract, which implies choice. Right? Now, slaves did not have a choice, were taken against their will, and were slaves for life. Here's a similarity between the two. Now, both were treated harsh. Not gonna lie. Both often died, not gonna lie, but inherently they are different. Okay? So, anyways, indentured servants. Set time, contract, choice. Once you're done with your time, you are free to live in the New World. And oftentimes, because of the Headright System, not only did the person bringing you in benefit from this and got 50 acres of land because they brought you in, you benefited from this too, because Virginia, and rather Jamestown, I mean, this whole area wants to bring in settlers. So they're dangling that carrot of incentive right there for free land, and you take it. I mean, plain and simple, you take it. So, this is going to be a very successful system, the Headright System. And especially for people who can, like, afford to pay their own way to the New World. Dude, you just got 50 acres. Like, free. That's amazing. So anyways, because of Bacon's Rebellion and because of the short-termness of indentured servitude, colonies are going to rely on slave labor to fill the gaps in labor. Because, I mean, let's face it, doing cash crops is very labor intensive. So, a little bit of context for slavery. The Spanish are going to be the ones to use slavery first in the New World. And how they use slavery is by various means. At first, they're going to enslave the native populations, but the native populations are dying by the hundreds and thousands. And so the Spaniards now look towards African slaves to fill this role. So the Portuguese are the ones who deal with slavery, sell them to the Spaniards. The Spaniards have these slaves work on like the sugar plantations. So slaves were brought into Virginia, into Jamestown in 1612. And we could see here that there's initially 20 that come in. All right. So these 20 at first were kind of treated like indentured servants, like they were eventually set free. But subsequent slaves after that are going to be treated a bit different. So the reason why indentured servants at first were a bit more appealing to people is because of the cost. The cost to bring in somebody with indentured servitude is not that high in comparison to buying a slave. But the long-term effectiveness, for lack of a better term, is going to lean more towards slavery, because slaves, you have them for life. Indentured servants, temporary. So, how slaves came over, and why slaves in the first place? I mean, well, first off, they were immune to European diseases, so for the Spaniards, that's why they're going to replace Native Americans. For everywhere, pretty much. It's hard to blend in if you're a slave, just because of appearance. Plus, Europeans kind of have the superiority complex against African slaves. And also, even on a religious sense, they're going to view them as, non-Christian. So it's going to be their duty to Christianize these people. So, add insult to injury. I mean, this is really a brutal chapter in U.S. history, especially the slave trade itself. Because, I mean, you get through brutal conditions, going through the triangular trade, and going on the Middle Passage. I mean, just brutality. So, what we see here is a diagram of a slave ship. And I mean, people were shoulder to shoulder, chained to each other. This is a really terrible way to travel. I mean, you're being taken against your will, you're mistreated, you're beaten. People die on this voyage. And you're not treated with any sort of dignity or respect whatsoever. So, as you came closer to shore, what ended up happening was you are treated a bit better as you get closer to shore. Your bodies are going to get oiled, make your skin look healthy, but they also put hot tar on your skin to hide any imperfections, any scars, any whippings, like anything like that. And this is just a terrible thing that we do to these enslaved people. So once you make it to auction, you were sold into slavery, and that was it. I mean, that was your life. You were a slave. So we'll talk more about slavery in America as we go on with this course, but so far, under colonial times, slavery is going to be rampant across the colonies. Some colonies will have more slaves than others, but slavery does exist everywhere at this point in our history. So, last bit of information I want to talk to you guys about with the southern colonies is about politics. So, because we have a bunch of people moving into these colonial areas in the South, there's going to be a need to have some law and order. Okay? So, colonies are going to establish their own legislatures. So, what ends up happening to our governmental structure is this. The British Crown is the ultimate authority, right? And then after that, it's going to be the Royal Governor that's appointed by the Crown. Then it's going to be the Colonial Council and Assembly sharing the power. So here's what each of them does. the governor is supposed to be carrying out the will of the crown, right? Making sure royal policy is carried out and oversees trade, and they have the authority to get rid of the colonial assembly. But the colonial assembly now has the authority to make laws to tax the colonists, and they can withhold the governor's salary. So really, are you going to get rid of the same institution that pays you? Honestly, no. So you see how the system is inherently flawed, right? It would be like this. It would be like, hey, if you guys directly paid teachers, would teachers actually do anything to make you mad? No. So it's the same kind of system we have here. It's flawed, and it's going to crash and burn. England does not really know how to handle its colonies, like, just saying. Plus, so this is a time period where colonists are getting their feet wet with colonial self-rule. Virginia House of Burgesses is a big example of that. This is the first legislative body in the New World, and the Virginia Company helps to establish this. It really angers King James. He doesn't like it. But this colonial assembly is going to be at first very open to all free men in Virginia. But then when we get the class distinctions going on later, there's going to be a new rule implemented to where only landowners can vote for who represents them in the Virginia House of Burgesses, thus limiting democracy in the southern colonies. So, speaking of King James, he's going to move to revoke the Virginia Company's charter and make Virginia a royal colony. So, why he does this is because Virginia Company is going bankrupt because they keep sending troops to stop the Native American attacks. After Chief Powhatan's death, I mean, Native American attacks just like soar like crazy. And King James, again, was upset with the creation of the Virginia House of Burgesses, so he is going to revoke that charter, and now southern colonies, in particular Virginia, are going to be a royal colony instead. So, that is your in-depth look on the southern colonies. So, hope you guys followed along and enjoyed that one. Dude, I am freaking tired with the southern colonies. I'm going to try to truck on through and record New England tonight as well because, bro, I'm a day behind. So, let me get on that, and I will catch you guys with the next stream that we do right now. So, alright guys, take care.